Happy New Year to everyone who's listening to this podcast. I hope 2025 was a good, fruitful year for you all, and I hope 2026 is going to be of the same manner. It's been quite a up and down year for me. There's been a lot going on. As you can see, I'm in a new environment. I've just moved house, bought my first home, and there's been several things that have happened throughout the year of 2025 that have been enlightening. As most years do, you evolve, you will grow, and especially in ways that you don't perceive, or they're not materially straightforward, or like as progress and the path to actualization or individuation. It never just simultaneously moves in a coherent manner. It's very up and downs and sideways and diagonal and backwards on yourself. That's what 2025 has been like. But overall, been a very fruitful year. And let's hope and pray for 2026 to be the same. So this is what this podcast is going to be about today. And it's for those that are maybe stuck in the pattern of every year coming around and then wishing something different was happening. Every year coming around and then being hopeful and wishful that they can finally change or they can finally make meaningful progress in their life, but not knowing what that looks like and not knowing like tangible goals to set, not knowing what it means to progress or how to progress. And so I'm going to break down the different developmental stages of the advancements of consciousness and how to grow in your own spiritual essence, but how to actually observe naturally where you are and what you need, what sort of input you need in your life, and what sort of output you can put out into the world, because we're all on different stages of our own growth and our own actualization, and there isn't one size fits all. And I think this is the problem of self-development or standard self-improvement advice, and some philosophical axioms as well, is they approach the paradoxical nature of growth as you need willpower, you need discipline, you need to pick something and stick to it and go. And it's like you override your emotions, you override your essence just to drill it better in yourself. Like if you're not happy with who you are, you're not happy with your life, like to kill your old identity, to kill your ego, and to create a new identity, to create a new persona, and to be this new person. And it just never works. And if it does work for people later on in life, it comes back to fruition, and your old identity, that part of you that tried to kill, will come back with force, and you end up creating a lot more resistance and a lot more suppression than you do actually natural growth and progress in the world. And so it's better that you start early with these things and try and do it psychologically, spiritually right, or with the right intention, than really trying to suppress your nature and suppress who you are. Because, as I say, you don't want to get 10, 20 years down the line having disciplined and willed yourself to a certain identity and a certain person, and then to look in the mirror and realise you don't really know who you are. These are not the goals that you wanted to pursue, the deep nature of you. You've just picked up the cultural norms of what society demands of you, what the narrative scripts of your parents gave to you, the psychodynamics of your family, the society, what your friends demanded upon you, what you thought out of insecurity was the right things to chase. And most of the goals that people set, especially around New Year's, come from that place of insecurity. They come from that place of insufficiency, and it's a place of scarcity. It's like, how can I better myself because I don't like myself? How can I prove myself to others? It's that social validation that people chase, and it's often misaligned with the true nature of what your whole essence wants to do, what your being wants to do. And so how do we orientate ourselves towards our true nature? How do we get more aligned with that? And I think it's important to keep in mind the different stages of developmental psychology when you discuss this, and especially most people that are going to be listening to this are of maybe the age of, 18 to 32, 35. And we are young in a sense, and we're in the stage of building, in the stage of forming an identity, in the stage of understanding and realising who we actually are, and coming to terms with not only our childhood, but how to be of the world and how to be in the world, and what it is to get feedback from the world, and how to like just situate ourselves in a pretty chaotic and messy world. And so we're in a building phase. We're in an identity forming phase. We've been through the developmental stages of consciousness, of psychology, which is like you go through being a baby to a child to an adolescence, and then you've reached what it is to be your fully formed identity, and you know who you are. You're not really going through the biological, physiological stages of puberty and growth. You've kind of come to a stall now, and you've formed your basic identity, and now it's time to put that out into the world and see what you can make of yourself. And so most of us are in that stage. And so whatever you do at this point in your life, whatever we all choose to pursue, is coming out of a place of trying to figure things out. We're trying to figure out how to situate ourselves in the world, what to pursue, what not to pursue. How does the world respond to me in this way? Does this feel right for me? Does that feel wrong? And so it's a very confusing time, and it's a time of trial and error. So I would first of all take the pressure off what your goals are for 2026, who you want to be for the next 5-10 years. Take the pressure off. Let's release that pressure for a little bit, because you're going to get it wrong. We're all going to get things wrong. We're all going to fail, but you kind of fall upwards in this sense of your life, especially in the early, I don't know if is adolescence the right word. I don't know if that's like young adulthood, but in this young adulthood stage of we're trying to figure it out, and developing from boy psychology into hopefully man psychology, we're trying to figure it out. We're falling upwards, and if you stay aware and you stay conscious, you're figuring out as you fail. So to build and to stick to something is probably the most important thing at this stage. It's very hard because I can't give any overarching advice, because there's not one truth fits all. But I'm going to stick with this first bit, and then I'll go through different stages of where I think you could be at and what you could do. So if you're at this stage of you're mentally and physically healthy, you feel calm, you're not overridden by anxiety, you're not in a mental health crisis, you're not paralyzed by fear or depression or lack of energy and like all these like psychosomatic illnesses, or you're just not, you feel calm within yourself, you feel comfortable within yourself, but you don't really know what direction to take, you don't really know where to go, and you're a bit confused and a bit lost in the sea of potentials and the sea of opportunity of what should I do next, what do I do for a career. I think the best thing is to stick to something right now, is to pick something and sacrifice and just be willing to incrementally improve at that one thing. And so this could be anything from like, right, I'm going to commit myself to this job and a gym routine, and I'm going to get myself in a routine and learn about myself and discipline myself into a structure. And this structure is going to allow me to learn what it takes to get good at something and to succeed at something, and to build a foundation. You want to build foundations at this point in your life. And it doesn't necessarily matter what it is, as long as it's not something that's fully against your true nature that you feel a lot of resistance to. Just something that has a lot of leverage, something that can grow, and something that has potential. And for me, I'm in like, I love psychology. I love this sort of work, and I love training. And so I'm pursuing them sort of things, and it's slow and it's deliberate, and the foundations are slowly being built. It's not happening instantaneously, but you can see it happening. It makes you feel more like you know where your feet are, and you feel more organized. And there's an archetype in Jungian psychology called the puer at aeternis, which translates to the eternal youth. And what a lot of young people go through and what they struggle with is that masculine identity of sticking to something and being able to be disciplined and routined and structured. And so if you're someone who has liked to partied, who has been traveling a lot or likes to move from side to side or not overly commit to something, you need to be aware that there's not part of your nature that wants to stay in that real eternal boy energy where you don't commit to something, where things are always potential, where things are always exciting. A certain amount of life and the mundane nature of it is boring, and it takes structure and it takes discipline. So be careful you're not enthralled by a puer complex, which, if I go into the deep Jungian psychology, is enthralled in the mother complex, but that's for another time. So make sure you're not in this internal boy energy. And if you are, and if you struggle to stick things through, and this, I'm probably talking to myself as I'm saying this, you need to pick something and you need to stick through it, because as Jung said, you overcome the puer, or you learn to integrate the puer through work. and the puer struggles with the waking up on a rainy day when work is boring and you're tired and you've got extra responsibilities. The puer feels like he needs to pull away from that and run off into the world of potential and to the world of imagination and the world of, if I pursue this, I'd be good at this. And you get all these potentials going on in your mind and there's too many options. You don't know what to pick. And at that point, you are living in that eternal boy energy where the world's wondrous, everything's possible. But maturing and growing as a man is realizing that there is limitations on your energy, there's limitations on your time. And so you need to learn to sacrifice. And it's sacrificial in the way of you pick something and you realize that you can't do everything. And then with that sacrifice takes energy, it takes time, it takes the excitement and the freedom away to a certain extent. And it's self-imposed limitations. But if you don't impose these limitations on yourself at any point in your 20s or 30s, then limitations will impose on you, and it'll be limitations that you don't want. It'll be responsibilities that you do not want, and things will pile upon you and it'll feel impossible to escape later on. And you've got a whole different problem at that point. It's not impossible to escape from. It just means that time, energy, responsibilities all pressure on you and make it harder. So in your 20s, you can explore and you can grow, and probably your late teens and your early 20s are for that. But as you start getting to your middle 20s and your later 20s, it's time to start putting some self-imposed limitations on yourself and to learn how to discipline yourself a little bit and to stick to things, because like anything to grow and anything to build the foundations upon, it needs to be put with time and energy and discipline. And so find something that you're naturally inclined to do. What is it that you like doing? What is it you could see yourself doing? It doesn't have to be perfect, because goals and potentials and our ambitions, they change as we grow, and they're kind of auto-correcting in a way. You try something and then it pushes you in a little bit of a direction and pushes you down a path, and then another path opens up and you follow that. But having some sort of discipline and commitment and maybe devotion to something really helps at this stage in your life. And it can build the foundations of a good structured masculine frame that you can later on then learn to integrate with other things in the unconscious and in the world. For the next person, the person that maybe is really mentally down at this point, and I've been here, guys, the extreme anxiety, drug issues, alcohol addiction, going out partying all the time, maybe being stuck in relationships that aren't serving them, who feels really mentally depressed or anxious, afraid, doesn't know what to do with themselves and can't get themselves out of the box that they're stuck in. It takes a different sort of approach, because unfortunately, if you're leaking mentally constantly, if you're constantly fighting an upwards battle of, I can't even get out of bed, I'm so anxious, I can't speak to people, I'm so depressed, like the psychosomatic feeling of my body is really heavy, like it's really hard to do things, I'm so anxious, I'm overweight. If you've got these issues, then it takes a completely different approach than someone who's maybe a bit more stable at the moment. And this isn't to say that's good or bad, this is just where we're at and where maybe you could be at as a person, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just takes a different approach. And so what you need to do if mental illness is plaguing you, or there's things in your life that are really alarming and are like too big of walls to get past, is it takes just internal work, guys, and it takes a real commitment to go into it, to sit with it, and to let the process unfold. And unfortunately, it does come at the cost of sometimes material pursuits and material gains, and your development and your growth will look maybe a lot slower than those around you. And I can relate to this because I feel like I've only got to the point now when I'm 27 where I've been able to start thinking about growing and start thinking about maturation. Before that, I really had to go through this stage, and it felt like it was slower for me. It felt like I wasn't developing and feeling like the people around me, like I was so mentally enthralled in depression and anxiety and existential crisis that I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't do anything in the world. I had to be of this other world, which is my inner world. I had to go in and not resolve the issues, but to sit with them and to be curious around them. And that was a big part of my spiritual growth. And without that, I wouldn't be here today with the inflection point of maturity and wisdom, but also ready to embody myself in the world where I can make progress. And it's paradoxical because this being stricken by depression or anxiety or real mental health issues can feel like a massive downfall. It can feel like it's really plaguing you and it's putting you back. But when I reflect back on my time with social anxiety and depression and kind of like suicidal tendencies, it's like I now am so grateful for that, because that is what took me on the path to where I am now. And I feel like going through a crisis earlier on allows you, if you deal with it correctly, to make spiritual and psychological growth in a way that people who don't struggle like this can't. And I think it gives you an advantage later on, which other people won't go through till their mid-40s and the mid-50s. And I'm going to explain this in a way. If you see people who have midlife crises. So it's kind of a common archetypal pattern that someone goes through a midlife crisis at the age 40, the age 50, whatever it may be. And that's when all the ideals of youth and all the ideals of who they thought they were start to drop, and they realize that they've not really served them. They've not really fulfilled them spiritually or in their essence. It's not provided them with what they thought it was going to. And so there becomes a dropping of ideals, a dropping of identity into this kind of place of ambiguity, in this place of not knowing what's happening, not knowing what's going on, and then trying to figure it out from there. And it's a shattering of an ego conception, of a persona, because it's like, wow, all my time I thought my work was meaningful, and I thought chasing money was meaningful, and I thought chasing all these different pursuits was going to give me something, but it hasn't. And now what do I do? Because I built my life around this. But if you're, and then some people just, as soon as they turn a teen into their 20s, they just crack on with the worldly pursuits, what the world demands of them, the material pursuits. They go and try and chase a high paying job, go and get a mortgage, get kids. And that's fine. And some people fall into it and they don't question it, and they live it out. And that's how development should be, in my opinion. If you read Jung didn't really talk about he didn't talk about early life, because his thought was your ego needed to form in the world. So you needed to be of the world, and you needed to form an identity in the world to realize the structures and limitations of who you are. So then later on you could have the midlife crisis that questioned it. And this is the proper way of development for what it is to be a human, I think. And it's the way of being of the world, but also later on reflecting on that. And you've got enough material. At this point, you've had enough ego formulation and ego strength to be able to reflect on it later on, and it not break you down into a full-on crisis. But for people like myself, people who are going through real big mental health issues earlier on, this is not the case. It's going to have to be switched around. So we're going to do things in reverse. And you're going to have to go on this spiritual pursuit, this psychological pursuit. You're going to go through an existential crisis, or kind of like an early life crisis now. But if you do it correctly and you do it with right awareness, and you pursue this to the full extent, I highly doubt you'll have a midlife crisis later on, because you would have really gone into what it is to explore your identity. And it's harder because you don't have as much in an ego to reflect on. You don't have much of a place in the world to reflect on, and you don't have as much experience to reflect on. So it's easier to get lost. But if you can really see this through, and I've got confidence that you can, because I managed to do it, you'll be fine. And it will benefit you when you get to, the stage that I'm at, where you can start thinking about building and being of the world. But in some sense, you're pulled away from it all. You're detached away from it all. So you're not chasing pointless material pursuits that are the scripts ran by society. You're not giving into all the things that everyone else gives into, that the masses give into, because you've had the period of introspection, you've had the period of inflection at such a young age that you can build from a more natural foundation. And it's a slow progress, and it's hard, and it can feel extremely confusing, but you can get through this. So going back to how we're going to do this. If you found yourself in a similar situation to me at a younger age, or whatever age you are now, and you're really struggling with this mental health crisis and depression, anxiety, whatever it be, it could be you've got binge eating disorder, you've got addicted to whatever substance. Let's stop and take account. And again, take the pressure off yourself and realize that your development and your process is going to be different to what most other people are doing. You're probably not going to materially see the progress you want. You're probably not going to live up to the expectations of what society demands of people. And you're not playing that game. You're going to have to invert that and go inwards and play a different game. And now it's uncovering where this neurosis, and neurosis being the pain that you have, the symptoms. The neurosis is kind of the energy behind the symptoms that you're experiencing. So if you're addicted to alcohol, what is the energy, the process that is causing that addiction to alcohol? If you've got anxiety or depression, what is the energy, what is the process behind that addiction, behind the depression, behind the anxiety? We're going to have to dialogue with these things. We're going to have to understand and become aware of them. We're going to have to learn how to feel, how to embody them, and how to integrate them into a new healthy identity and a new level of awareness. And for me, at first, it looked a lot like sitting with the pain, sitting with the anxiety, sitting with the depression, sitting with what it was. I had a quite extreme amount of social anxiety, and depression, very suicidal tendencies, and it took me to have to meditate constantly. I was meditating like an hour a day, 30 minutes a day to an hour a day, just sitting with this pain, sitting with the feelings, trying to be inquisitive, being curious about it, inviting it up to my conscious awareness so I could learn from it. I could learn to what it was trying to tell me, where it was coming from. What was it about my developmental process where this has been allowed to merge? Was it childhood trauma? Was it something that I've experienced? What was happening and what was going on? And curiosity is going to be your biggest friend here. And so if 2026, you're coming into the year with massive mental health problems, let's be curious about yourself this year. Let's learn to be inquisitive. Let's read the right material that's going to teach us about how to have a relationship to the mind and have a relationship to, I don't know why a bubble with a thumb's just come up on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, just this weird bubble came up. That was really strange. Sorry guys, but you're gonna have to be curious. You're gonna have to learn to sit with yourself and be quiet. And this is gonna take sacrifice. It's gonna take, right, I'm not gonna pursue the things that other people are pursuing because they're not going to fulfill you like they're fulfilling the other people at that point. Like when I had social anxiety and when I couldn't even hold eye contact with a woman, or I couldn't speak to someone, it's like I couldn't think about going and making loads of money. I couldn't think about going and getting a job and that, because I couldn't have done that like that. I couldn't have been in that place because it just wasn't possible for me. I wouldn't have operated. I wouldn't have been accepted. I wouldn't have been allowed to work in that place because I didn't have the capability at the time. I didn't have the energy for it. And so I couldn't chase money. I couldn't chase status. I couldn't chase these things because I just didn't have it in me. I was so enthralled by this energetic depression and anxiety that like it was making action impossible. And so I had no option but to come inward. And it's like the anxiety and the depression and whatever they may be, they're indicators to come and sit with it, come and invite it into consciousness and to dialogue with it, to become friends with it. And you need to learn, in essence, how to reparent yourself, how to grow with it, and how to learn to accept it. And yeah, it is a real shame because I think a lot of people, they think they're anxious and they think they're depressed because they can't hold down the job and they can't pursue the things, and everyone else around them's doing well. But it's a completely different scenario you're in. You're in this situation because maybe them things aren't for you right now. Your calling is to come inwards and to learn about the identity and to get through this in a way that you can come out of it afterwards and be of a calm essence and be of good in the world. And your worldly pursuits will come later. But right now you have to deal with the anxiety. You have to deal with the depression. And I could go into different therapeutic modalities of how to do this, but I've got loads of videos talking about that, and I will go through them in later podcasts. But I want this to be a more kind of overview, philosophical take on the developmental process of early years, of early adolescence into kind of spiraling into the mature masculine, and what that means for your yearly goals. And so how do we set goals as well? So like you can still have goals within these. You can still have goals within, if you've got inner work, you can still have goals if you feel like you're a bit stable at the minute, and kind of like, let's use the metaphor of you're a boat. If you're a boat on the sea, and your boat it's got holes in it and water's spilling in everywhere, and the boat's nearly capsizing. It's like, that's what it feels like to be in a mental health crisis. Like, you're constantly waking up in this fear of, oh wow, I need to go and patch up the boat so it's not leaking, and I'm nearly capsizing, so I need to go and get some weights and balance it out the other side. You're waking up in fear, or you're always having to fix something, you're always having to do something. And so if you're in that, you need to focus on fixing the boat and how to fix the boat permanently. But if your boat is relatively calm right now and it's like just bobbing along in the sea, it's like, where do I go next, and what do I do? And goals are funny. Goals are like, I'm not really sure where I'm going with this podcast, guys. I've not got anything planned. I'm just waffling, so sorry if it's not making very coherent sense, but there'll be little nuggets of wisdom within it. And goals are so funny, man, because there's that quote by Carl Jung. It's like, if the path beyond you is clear, it's probably not yours. And so when I think about goal setting, when I think about defining a future for yourself, it's like that comes from an ideal with somewhere from within the identity, and you project what you want to do. You kind of project that identity and that thought of who you are out into the future, and you kind of break that down into like micro steps, and you work towards that. And that sounds like creating super clarity, and it sounds like you create your world and you kind of create the future and you move into it. But as I think of the nature of identity and the nature of the unconscious, I'm like, that in itself, that idea of goal setting and that idea of doing this really puts self-importance on who you think you are. And who you think you are is not the thing that we should be interested in. It's who we actually are. And who we actually are is infinitely more complex than the little idea and the narratives of who we think we are. And so I always get confused with goal setting, because it's like, does it come from a place of what I think I should be doing instead of what I actually should be doing? And how do you figure this out? And do you know what? I'm not even going to give advice on it, because, do you know, I don't actually know. It's not something I've figured out yet. But maybe I could just talk about my own experience of what I've got planned for 2026, and we can try and deconstruct that into my philosophy on this. So for 2026 right now, I've got some like rough ideas of where I want to be and kind of what feels right. And it's to lean into the things that I feel like I can't not do. So in my curiosities, and I use my curiosity as an indicator, it's kind of a compass of where to go. I can't not study psychology. Like, I've got the red book in the corner, if you could see it. My girlfriend bought it me for Christmas. And I can't not study that sort of thing. Like, I think about my life and what feels right and where I want it to go. And I'm like, that has to be a cornerstone of my life. It's like to read psychology. And so a certain amount of goals are going to follow my curiosities. There's also, I'm interested in martial arts in a minute, and training and moving my body in different ways. So that's going to be, again, another North Star. These are going to be like things I'm aiming towards. They're not concretized. They haven't got like perfectly written smart goals, but they're ideas that are floating out there. And there's ways that I can formulate them into practical little steps for my day to day. It's like turning up to training, making sure I'm making time to read. These things, eating healthy. These things can be goals that are not concretized in the way that they stop me from seeing and learning from reality, but they're kind of like these rough principles that I can follow. And so you can do the same. What is it you're curious about? What are the things that you naturally find your inclination towards? You when you allow yourself to fully sit with the things you're interested in, what do you want to do? And this can look like anything for anyone. And just sit with them and think, what would satiate me in a way where if I pursued that thing, it would make my life feel more aligned and more whole. And I think orientate your goals from that, instead of trying to create financial goals or health goals, or follow the curiosity, because I think that curiosity is like a wise instinct. It's a wise intuition that is embedded into the human existence. And I think that it's divine in a sense that if you follow your curiosities and you follow the things that interest you and to their full pursuit and to their full end, and not for the sake of some outcome, but if you pursue it for the sake of the curiosity, it seems to move into the world and materialize as something positive and something beneficial to you instead of something of ego or something of selfish desire. So follow the curiosity for the sake of the curiosity. But then I could say part of that would be like the curiosity for me sometimes never end, and sometimes there is a certain amount of shutting that off, and this is where it comes back to the puer complex. Like the puer complex just gets lost in all the potentials and all the beauty of nature, and and anything that can happen is just constantly following things. So you do need to be aware that you're not constantly chasing things, but do let your curiosity lead you in a way. Let it kind of structure your life and structure your goals, because I think that is really important. So yeah, make 2026 a year of awareness, guys. I think awareness is in overall the overarching principle that I think benefits your life. The integration of the lessons you learn from living life, and there is also a certain amount of adaptability that life is going to put on you. I think now I've got my own home. There's bills I've got to pay. There's upkeep. Like we've got an air source heated and it keeps breaking. I've got to ring the air source heating people. So like life is going to demand things of me, and I need to make sure I'm meeting the demands of life. And Man's Search for Meaning talks about this. Viktor Frankl very well. It's like sometimes you don't need to look to impose a meaning on life. You just need to find what life is demanding upon you. And so maybe if you're really stuck, and maybe if this podcast hasn't resonated with you so far, what is life demanding of you right now? Look at the material world, and just think what is it that I could do right now that life's demanding of me? And if you keep doing them things and you keep turning up to them things, and I mean turning up in the sense of like you're there and you're not elsewhere just doing them for the sake of doing them, but give it your all, turn up to the things as you do them. That you'll find meaning in that, you'll find purpose within that, and that's important, because life can be teaching, it can be a lesson. And there's that quote, it's life presents you with people and circumstances to show you where you're not free. And the circumstances and the situations of life and the responsibilities, they teach you in a way. They teach you in a way of they get you to stop being who you think you are and more who you actually are, and you learn from life. I think of the lessons I've learned from just moving in already. It's like I've had to adapt to being an adult, to like actually taking care of upkeep of things, and that's teaching me that when I do these things, like they're not as hard as I thought they were. Like they're not as complex as I thought. When managing finances isn't as complex as you think it is. And when life demands these things upon them, you just do them, and you learn, and you grow, and you adapt. And it's that staying fluid and that staying flexible, and not having an overarching attachment to your identity that's like, I can't do this. This is overwhelming. They're all narratives. They're all ideas. They're all coming from places of trauma or coming from places of past experience. Like if you turn up in the presence where your feet are and you just engage with the thing in front of you, like you will work things out, and there'll be meaning in that, because you'll be working through the narratives, you'll be working through the things that prevent you from doing that. There's kind of like there's a weird dialogue with reality, a weird dialogue with the world that happens when you really engage with it. And it's a dialogue with bringing up parts of your psyche that you didn't know were there, and it reveals it to you. And then like you kind of work with the things that life has give you, and that kind of then clears that out of your consciousness, and then you get this new level of development, a new level of growth. And it's like the inner world and the outer world are so intertwined with each other that they can kind of bring you to a level of, you forget that one is out there and one's in here. I don't know if I'm getting too esoteric with this, but yeah, if you can also find meaning just by meeting the demands of life, and that could just be 2026 for you. It's like, I'm going to engage with my life, I'm going to engage with work and see what it actually is like to engage with work. I'm not going to think I don't want to be here, I'm going to hide away somewhere up in my imagination. I'm going to like engage with these things and see how they go. And a certain amount of that is like being in your body. Like, your body is the thing that connects you to the material world. A lot of people live up somewhere in their mind, somewhere in this Alexander Lowen calls it this schizoid disturbance, which is like kind of this narrative, this mental construct up somewhere in the back of the head, behind the eyes. But like, if you learn to bring yourself back into the body more, anchor yourself where your feet are, remember every time you take a step, like just being in contact with reality, like that can make you engage and help more. So some form of movement practice and any form of like anchoring back to your body is going to help you in 2026 as well, guys. I think I'm just going on a bit of a tangent now. I don't know if there was any structure to this, so I'm going to stop the podcast. But thank you very much for listening. I appreciate everyone that... I didn't post many episodes in 2025, but I appreciate anyone that listens and anyone that continues to support me, whether that's through messages, likes, subscribers, or just comments. And yeah, I really do hope that you have a promising year. And remember that even if you've had a negative year in 2025, it's often the suffering and often the losses and the hardships that reveal and awaken us up to a new way of being and reveal us to our true nature. And life, you wouldn't learn anything from life if it was all plain sailing. And this material plane is a good place for our soul to learn and to grow. And to become souls. I think at first we're born, we're not a soul in a way, we're just the essence of consciousness of God. And I think we become individuated, we become individual through this human plane. And it creates an identity, and it allows us to learn and grow and test us. But you don't get that if you don't have the suffering, if you don't have the hardships. So stay strong, people. Stay calm, stay present, stay anchored. And I hope you all have a smashing year. I hope you all have had a good 2025. I hope there's not too many headaches today. Obviously, New Year's Day is always a struggle. Used to be a massive struggle for me. But yeah, thank you very much for listening, people, and I'll see you all in the next video.